I kind of summarize it. I say it's making spirit comfortable in the physical. That's my mission.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast with me, Chris. Glad you could be here. Today I've got Ed Paget on the show and we delve into his journey and understand more about lifestyle medicine, what that means to Ed. He's an osteopath and founder of the Scoliosis Correction protocol. He helps people online and in person host retreats over where he lives in Nicaragua. So we dive into all of the things conducive to lifestyle medicine, health in general, sleep, rest, and the importance of movement and natural living as well. He's definitely on the same wavelength with me in my perspective. But we also just dive into culture and society and really have an open conversation about lots of different things, perspective being one of those which is most important. And how we can learn more about spiritual needs and our spiritual health and how that translates into the physical. So hope you enjoyed the podcast. I wanted to also let you know that I have my first men's retreat, which is happening in the UK in the Lake District. August, the dates are 2022, August the 14th, Friday to Sunday, August the 16th. That weekend is the weekend that I'll be hosting this retreat. It's an intimate retreat with 6 people. So this is my first one and it's called Facing the Shadow. It is to dive in and bring all that you are to a transformational experience. This is not going to be easy for people. It's actually a challenging retreat. It's challenging yourself, but in an effort to transform those parts of you that you want to improve, you want to look at and delve into the depths of your mind, your psychology, and how you relate to things, and looking towards that shadow, the things that are unconscious, the behaviors, the patterns, the things that we put away and don't look at. So if you want to find out more about this retreat that I'm doing, send me a message over at Body Mind Practice on Instagram or shoot me an email, links below, if you want to find out a little bit more. So I'm just gathering interest at this point. I appreciate this is somewhat last minute for people, but if you feel called to, then answer the call and get in touch to find out more. Okay, appreciate it and hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you could take a second just to click subscribe, that will be helpful. Appreciate it. Enjoy the podcast. So lifestyle is your medicine. When did that come about? Like, how did that come to you as a powerful phrase? Was that the kind of beginnings of, well, you tell me, I end up asking a question and trying to answer it myself.
I understand. Can I start from the beginning?
Go for it. Yeah.
So I went to Exeter University. I did a sport and exercise science degree. And that kind of was my first introduction into sort of health and fitness and that kind of thing. And then at the end of that, they kind of churn you out and, what do you do like with a sport and exercise science degree? So I went and worked in a gym and I realized I didn't actually, even though I had a degree, I didn't have the smarts to actually personal train people. So I had to then do a personal training diploma and massage and so on. Anyway, this led me down this path of osteopathy. Eventually, I went to do a 4-year degree in osteopathy. And then that led me into this more philosophical world of manual therapy and what is osteopathy. And in the US, a lot of people don't know this, but osteopathy and normal medicine are equal. And so you can go to an emergency room and be treated by an osteopath or an MD. You can have a DO, doctor of osteopathy, or MD, medical doctor, and you can't tell the difference. And so philosophically, that's kind of interesting. Like, why is America the only country in the world with 2 streams of medicine? And you kind of trace that back to how effective osteopathy was at the turn of the century. So it got legislated as a medical profession, whereas chiropractic and things, they didn't get that. So then I was like, okay, well, what did the old time osteopaths actually do? Like, what made them so effective? Started going deep dive into the old books and realizing that the founder of osteopathy, A.T. Still, was influenced a lot by the First Nations, the indigenous people in America at the time. So I thought, well, if he was influenced by them, I'll go off and find them. So went in Canada. I was living in Canada at the time, spent a lot of time with the First Nations, and then kind of got interested in indigenous healing. and what their philosophy was. And so I tried to travel around the world and meet indigenous healers. And one thing that kept coming through is it's not about the medicine. I'll back up. Not about the pharmaceutical medicine, because the indigenous healers do use medicine, plant medicine, but it's a lot about lifestyle. And it's the lifestyle that kind of gets you sick. And so if you think of it as if you're doing what you've done and that's brought you to the doctor or the shaman or whoever it is, then you could probably use the same kind of philosophy to get you out of it. And recently there was a study, I see in 2014, a study out of the US that showed that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. And that means that when you look at things like blood pressure, cholesterol, weight to height ratio, waist to hip ratio, that kind of thing, there's these norms that show that if you have a normal sort of range, you're less likely to get sick as you get older, diabetes, stroke, heart attack, that kind of stuff. So they took this big cross section of Americans, and only 12% were actually metabolically healthy. And all those things, the blood pressure, the cholesterol, all that kind of stuff, comes from lifestyle. So then I was like, wow, okay, we've got this 12% that are healthy. The rest of them are unhealthy, but it's not they were born that way. It's that they lived that way and made themselves unhealthy. And so then I was like, okay, that's it. Lifestyle is your medicine. There's a long answer to your question.
That's a beautiful answer. Well, yeah, well drawn out. It is. I connect with that. I mean, it is true. I don't think we're born flawed, or we have these, genes that carry our destination. It's quite the opposite, right?
Exactly.
I think we fall into that belief or mindset these days that it's hereditary, or I hear people say it, and I'm like, okay, but how far back do you want to take that? It came in at some point. Like our ancestors weren't really counting the high and low cholesterol. Well, you mentioned that there. Well, what are your thoughts on the cholesterol as in a marker for health?
Yeah. Good.
Because
Good
there's
question.
because the interesting space of like the correlation versus the causation and high and low, and we have these within us. Surely nothing really within us is good or bad. It's like, there's a balance to everything.
Yeah, and cholesterol in itself is a building block for hormones, so we need it, right? And we produce it ourselves. So then we come along with the tests, and we say, well, these people have high cholesterol, these people have low cholesterol, and we're not talking about just cholesterol in general. It's the HDL versus the LDL is the better way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And even some people say that's not accurate enough. We need to go down a level. But here's the interesting thing: there's a study out of Harvard that's ongoing. It's called the Harvard Adult Aging Study. And it's been going for 80 years.
Yeah.
And they looked at these people in their, I think it was late teens, and they followed them through their lives, and they followed their spouses and their children as well. And recently I was doing a bit of a study on it. And the lead researcher was saying that to get a healthy 80-year-old, you can look back in the study and see what were they doing, and what was their blood pressure like and so on when they're, let's say, 40. And so he said, the healthy 80-year-old, the strongest predictor of a healthy 80-year-old is not their cholesterol when they're 40, is not their blood pressure, it's the quality of their primary relationship. And I was like, whoa, that to me just blew my mind. It wasn't any of those physical markers that we get all excited about. It was actually more of a mental, emotional, spiritual marker. And so to me, it's like, yeah, like you asked me what I think of cholesterol. I mean, not much, to be honest. I mean, let's not worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see it, don't you? And you witness it in blue zones, in places that people live to a very long, fruitful age. And what else are they doing? But what is the one thing they're getting right? And that is, it's their spiritual, their mental, and their needs being met with the community. And having, like, my partner's grandfather is 92. That's successful as a human to live to 92, and his quality of life now is amazing. But the connection he has with his family is so strong, and he lives for it. It's the one thing that, I say loneliness is the leading cause of death in the world. It'd be very hard to measure, but it's almost it points to a lot, doesn't it? Because it's like, what are you living for? I ask people, like, it's kind of the opposite to the question, but is there anything you would die for? What would you die for? And that speaks directly to what are you living for? Like, what is the one thing that drives you, is it pulls you forward, and is your mission in life? And that taps into the spiritual health of things for sure.
Mission and purpose. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's they did a study out of John Hopkins, where they looked at these nerve receptors. And these nerve receptors were a type of touch that caused, when you were touched in that way, it caused you to relax, like a sympathetic response. And you have to touch them at, I think it's like 2 to 3 centimeters a second. So it's like a stroke. So imagine you're stroking a little kid. It's like that. Calm down, calm down. It makes sense, right? These things will calm you down. But the place where they're most dense on the body is on your back. So you can't actually touch them yourself, which makes you think, well, why have we evolved to have these receptors on our backs that when strokes calm us down? We are pro-social. We have to be. We have to have people in contact with us actually touching us. Well, we don't have to, but that's like our body is wired that way almost.
Interesting. Yeah. The visual I've got is like, someone's got your back, someone's behind you protecting that side of, you think you go to sleep probably back to back with someone, or like how many thousands of years was that the case, where you all huddled together and looked out
hugging someone, like, what do? We hold on to someone and generally rub their back. Were we taught in school to rub someone's back? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Or sometimes we tap it, but usually it's a rub, right? I don't know why, but it's intuitive.
Absolutely. And then you're looking at what they can't see when you do hug them.
That's true. Then you've got each other's backs.
Then you got each other's backs.
Yeah,
that's incredible. So let's tap into the missions then. What's your kind of overarching mission? Do you have like a big one in terms of what you're doing now and the work you're doing? And also I'd like to understand more about the move to Nicaragua and why there, and what's kind of going on for you.
Yeah, it all ties in. So I'm from the UK originally, and graduated from osteo school, and I met my future ex-wife, as we can say now, my future ex-wife at osteo school. And she said, well, we can kind of slog it out in the southeast of England, where we're both from, or we can go to Canada. And she happened to have a Canadian citizenship. So we went to Canada, and she sold me on like living in the mountains with skiing, and it was a good sales pitch, and I enjoyed it. We went there. We went to a place near Banff called Canmore, and we set up a little clinic. But no one really kind of came to that clinic. It was like this transient mountain town where sometimes I would get someone with a broken collarbone, and they'll be like some ski dude, and he was like, "Oh, do you reckon I can ski tomorrow?" And I'll be like, "No, you need to go to hospital." And then they'll be like, "All right," and then that would be it, right? But we also set up a little clinic in this town called Calgary, which is about an hour and a half away. And it just skyrocketed. And we were the first osteopaths in this province of Alberta. And Alberta is the size of France, 3 million people. And so we were like, oh, we're the first ones. This should be easy. And we set up a clinic. We we actually did lectures in medical school about osteopathy. And we basically brought the profession there. By the time we left, there was about 70 or 80 of us, which was really great to see that. But anyway, the problem was we built a huge clinic, and we had a movement center next to the clinic, and we had these rooms. We would get osteopaths in from all over the world to come and work with us, because there weren't many homegrown Canadian osteopaths at that time. And I was telling my clients, I was saying that you gotta like stop stressing. You gotta like think about this oil company you work for, and that you're representing in legal battles against destroying the environment. I don't know whether this really jives with you. And people be like, yeah, maybe I should think about, moving jobs and so on. But I was working 60, 70 hours a week, 2 young kids, grinding. And I was getting like, not necessarily sick, but just burnt out. And then an opportunity came to sell the clinic. And I thought about it with my wife, she was also, or ex-wife, she was also an osteopath. And we were like, yeah, let's just sell, let's get rid of this. And we sold everything, sold our house, sold all our stuff, took 6 suitcases and moved to Nicaragua, where we wanted to give the kids a second language, put them in a good school here, and just take a year or 2 off. And that was 4 years ago, because we ended up, you sell everything, you get rid of all the stresses in life, you realize you're great partners for business, great partners as parents, but perhaps not the best match for our individuality. So we actually split up. but we're still really good friends. In fact, I spent all day yesterday with her, which is great. And we do loads of things with the kids together. But at one point, and this is, I'm getting to your question here. At one point during that breakup, I was quite depressed, and I was trying to work online, and nothing was really gelling. And I was trying to sell this online course that I have, and it wasn't working for me. And I was kind of breaking down. I was going to the gym, and I was like lifting one set of weights, and then I was sitting down and lying down, and then realizing that half an hour, 45 minutes went past, and I'm still just lying down on the floor or on the bench. And I'd never been depressed before, so I didn't really know what it was. And then I was like, why am I even doing this? Why am I trying to earn money for a family that I no longer have, for a family unit I no longer have? You know, what's the point? And then I was like, okay, what is the point? What is the point? So the point is my patients, my clients, these people who I can affect and change all over the world. This person in Iceland who has back pain, and his business is, this is true, his business is an amazing business, but he can't spend time at the computer. So he consults with me, helps his back pain. Now he spends time on the computer, his business takes off, and so on. So there's this ripple effect that I feel from every client I help, online or in person. And that to me is the mission. It's this spreading this ease through humanity to be more comfortable in their bodies. And, you know, if we want to get spiritual on it, I kind of summarize it. I say it's making spirit comfortable in the physical. That's my mission.
Making spirit comfortable in the physical.
In the physical. Yeah. Because spirits, you know, spirits, perfect. Our bodies, however, what we do with our bodies can cause some problems. And so I feel like I'm like the, you know, like it's a phrase, body mechanic, but I'm like a body mechanic that tries to sort of take away your aches and pains or your illnesses, or sometimes even help you recover from disease so that you can get on doing your mission.
Yeah, that right there is grounded spirituality, because what you do find with a lot of the spiritual communities that they're not necessarily in their bodies. And there's this separation, which is, you know, when you look at Jeff Brown on the podcast, he talks to this. I mean, he's very full on with it, and he doesn't hold anything back. He's quite stark for a lot of people. But he talked about Eckhart Tolle and when you see him, you see this disembodied character that is not connected into his physical body.
Right.
And you have all these needs. Yes, your spiritual needs by being met, but we are humans at the end of the day, and we've evolved in this body, and to be connected to the body is embodying it all, right? It needs to be looked at in that way. It is a lifestyle. You might, again, have the spiritual needs met, but that's not a lifestyle. It's one aspect of a lifestyle. Totally. So it's super powerful that you've drawn that out, and it's very important because people have a lot of important missions, and they when they can't function within their body, well, what is there, you know?
What is it? Your back pain will take over, or your stomach cramps or your headaches or whatever, and then it becomes all consuming for some people, and so then they can't do their mission. But I had an interesting insight the other day. I don't know whether you're familiar with people who channel, you know, like you can talk to someone and they channel. I have it's a different story, but I have a friend who channels, and we've been talking to this her sort of spirit entity called Seth for maybe 10 years now. Wow. And I speak about every 6 months, and it's fascinating what he talks about. And the other day I was talking to him about plant medicine, ayahuasca, spiritual journeys, and all that kind of stuff. And he said, well, I'm going to say something that sounds counterintuitive. And I was like, what's that? He says, the spiritual community has it 180 degrees wrong. I was like, okay. He goes, you are spirit coming into the physical. So physical is where it's at. You're already spiritual. You don't need to have a spiritual experience. And I was like, whoa, like all the meditation, all the, you know, the mushrooms, all these things that people use to have a spiritual experience, when really that's taken care of. It's the physical experience that we need to embody. And like, you know, simply putting your hand into cold water and feeling the sensation change, that's a spiritual experience. Or taking food and going, wow, I'm a spirit that can't eat, that can't taste this food. And so we've created this body which allows us to do that. And we put something in our mouth, and the explosion of flavors that's feeding the spirit right there. So that was, to me, that was a huge insight recently. I was like, oh yeah, it's all about the physical.
That's incredible. I feel like that's what breath work can tap into, because you are getting into the body, you're feeling more than anything. And you can have that spiritual experience by just tapping into that. I got in the cold this morning, and it actually came to my awareness more when I was with someone a couple of days ago, and she was like, oh, I feel so alive. And I was like, yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And don't ignore that. Don't try and get away from that. Like the cold, you feel your body more than ever. You feel the sensations heighten. And that's exactly why we're doing it, to feel more, to get out of the mind, and get out of the distraction, get out of the kind of the daydream, which is a distraction from the now, right? It's a daydreaming about the future or daydreaming about the past. You can see it in that way. And that's exactly what we can do in these moments.
Well, and those physical sensations root us to the present. You know, our mind can time travel left, past and future, but our body can't. And so the breath work grounds us in the present. And so do things like temperature or taste or music, they ground us right here. And that brings us back into our body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was recently unwell, and I was, it's not something that I quite pride myself on not getting ill very often, even colds. It's interesting, isn't it, when your number one value is your health, and of course that may change and flux, but generally that's the guiding light, especially in this space as well, when you're also trying to help people with their health. And I was like, oh, this is quite deep. Like, there was a bit of guilt there, a bit of uncertainty, like, why is this happening? Like, trying to figure it out with the mind, which is so irrelevant, because and I reached this point, I was like, well, what is health? It's not like something I can be. I can't be health. Like, you're never there. You never arrive. Your body's always in. You might have a late night. You might come back. Yeah. And I was just like, it's so profound. Like, I thought health was something I was, and that was ego. Like, I can't be that. And when you are that, it's probably not a healthy place to be. Thinking you are. And I was like, okay, well, my body doesn't care about the things I've got to do. And I was chatting to my friend, actually. I reached out to him. He's called Alex Johnson. He's called Family Nature Cure. He's an osteopath.
Oh, yeah. He was in Costa Rica for COVID. Yeah. We communicated. Yeah.
Did you? Amazing. Yeah. So I reached out to him, and he was like, that your body's trying to communicate exactly what it needs. And I was like, yeah, that's all I need to hear. He said a lot more. And he checked in with me yesterday. He's such a good guy. And then I was like, okay, so the things I thought I had to do, or next week or whatever, that my body doesn't even register that. It doesn't even know that. It's all it knows is right now. And how amazing is that to communicate with me? You just want to collapse and not eat and rest. And that's exactly what it needed. It's so interesting.
Yeah. I look at having like a fever. I don't have them very often, but I had COVID a while back, and I ran a fever for a while. And people are trying to put the fever, they're trying to suppress the fever.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, hang on, I haven't been sick for, I don't know, like 10 years or something. I've probably got a lot of little pathogens floating around in my system that need to be burnt off. And so I lay there, and I was just like, bring it on. Let's clear house. Let's do it. And so, I feel as though came out of the COVID fever refreshed, as opposed to this long COVID that other people are getting. And maybe that's just luck, but I think mindset had something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference. And Alex spoke to, he said he notices when people just give themselves the rest and surrender, that come out of it feeling a lot better and refreshed, regenerated, rejuvenated, over the people that don't, and they fight it and they push themselves. And then it's like, okay, there's a longer period of time that this isn't going to heal from. Yeah, man. So it's back into your story then. So what does your day-to-day look like? You're dealing with a lot of clients online. I know you're doing your retreats, and obviously the scoliosis things you can speak to. I don't know much about that kind of world. Could you educate us on a bit of that?
Yeah, I can. So running a clinic back in Canada was So Canada's, it snows for 6 months of the year where we were. So the house had a garage that was attached to the house. So I could get up, have something to eat, get in my car, drive to work with a garage. There was a garage that was part of the work as well. Walk out of that into my clinic, treat people all day, maybe we had that gym, maybe go to the movement center, go back to the house without ever going outside. And that was one of the reasons I just didn't think that lifestyle was working for me. So coming here, I sat and I worked a lot, writing out what the perfect day is, who's going to be in that perfect day, and and so on. Who are the players? What does the week, the month look like? So generally, my day is up at about. It's funny. I wake up at 5. Now I don't want to wake up at 5. It's just that the environment here wakes you up. There's birds, there's chirping, there's motorbikes. It's Central America, so you're up at 5. A bit of journaling, and then the gym that I go to opens at 6:30. So meet my buddy in the gym, come back from there. Usually it's a fresh fruit breakfast because we've got so much fruit here. It's absolutely amazing. And then at sort of 9 o'clock, I start work, and the work is either online consulting with clients for back pain and scoliosis. Scoliosis is my main focus. But I also have lifestyle medicine clients or lifestyle clients, and it's more sort of similar to executive coaching, we can call it. But the way I do it is we start with their mission and vision and purpose. And this comes from a company out of Finland called Hinsa, who I trained with. And they used to work with Formula One racing drivers. And Mr. Hinsa, Aki Hinsa, he would sit down with them. He says, okay, we're going to help you with your sleep, your fitness, nutrition, all these things. But you got to tell me one thing. And these young racing drivers are like, yeah, okay, what is it? Like, what happens if the team drops you? Are you still a racing driver? And they'll be like, he says, okay, what happens if you crash? You can't race. He's like, okay, you need more than one pillar in your life. So he would make them come up with 3 or 4 different things to hold up the mantle of their life, so that if they lost one, they're still good. And that was the idea of this purpose and mission and vision. And so I thought about that, and I was like, that's so good, because everything else will come off that. For example, I used to work with Olympic athletes in Canada, and if their friends would say to them, hey, let's go to a party this weekend, and they're in the middle of a training cycle to get to World Championships, which will get them to the Olympics, they'd be like, no, I can't go to a party this weekend. I need to, because that will affect my gym the next day. I need to sort of keep on top of my nutrition, keep on top of my exercise program. And once their mission was set of getting to the Olympics, everything else fell into place, from sleep regimes to food to exercising to saying no to certain things to holidays. It all falls into place. But if you don't have that mission, vision, sort of purpose, then you can sort of be a bit lost. So I help people with that. That's the lifestyle medicine coaching. That's how it kind of works. But it brings in sleep, nutrition, movement, stress management, all those kind of things are part of it. So going back to questions, so it's seeing people online, and then I will see some people in person for regular osteopathy. And then I part-time share my kids, so I want to be with them. So come 3 o'clock, that's pretty much kid time after that.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, going back to what you just touched upon with there's such a powerful image of if you break your leg as an athlete, what happens?
What's
or
your
like
identity?
Yeah, what's your identity? And it taps into way more than just, okay, I'll just pick something else. And okay, I've got my family, or I've always been passionate about, doing this, and I can do that. It's way more than that, because for me, it's like you're not relying on one thing to bring you the happiness. And also, in turn, you're not relying on that thing that you could go to if it wasn't this. And it's way more than that. It's like nothing external is really going to be fulfilling. Of course, it's good to that for me is like a question that actually is so much more beyond that than just, okay,
isn't it?
Pick something else and then you can have that as a safety net. It's not that at all.
No, it's not that. So the way he described it was he worked with, there's an Olympic runner called Haile Gebrselassie. I don't know if you remember that name. He was Ethiopian. And this is like 1996, Atlanta and that kind of stuff. And this guy, Aki Hinsa, was a doctor, and he was a surgeon, and he had to operate on this guy's ankle. And he's about to go into the operation and he's nervous. And he says to Haile Selassie, you know, you're one of the best runners in the world. You might not be after this operation. And Gabriel Selassie turns around and says, so what? It's just running. Like it's fun. Like, forget about it. It's a sport. And so Aki Hintsa was like, well, hang on, because in Finland, the Olympic athletes strut around, and their status as an athlete is their social status. You know, that is them. It defines them through and through. So then he goes to Africa, goes to Ethiopia with Gabriel Selassie, and he realizes that they don't call him the Olympian. They call him the family man who runs. And it was family first, then the running second. But he was also a big philanthropist. And so he would run to get money for his businesses to help people in Addis Ababa. And he had this kind of hierarchy of family, business, country, running. And so if he was to lose running, it didn't matter. Whereas the Olympic athletes in Finland, that also this guy Aki Hintsa was working with, had it all the way around. It was everything to reach the Olympics, then maybe family and so on. And once they retire, a lot of these guys then start getting more philanthropic. But this athlete was doing it whilst he was one of the best in the world. And that changed Aki Hintsa's mindset on how to work with athletes, because once they get injured, if they don't have anything else, it's game over for their egos, for their, you know, as you know, right? When athletes retire, if they haven't got a plan in place, they usually kind of get depressed.
Yeah. It's interesting because people can go beyond their limits when they're all in with something and they sacrifice everything else. Like they, in some respects, they'll tap into their potential that way. But is it, what's driving you there? Is it the fear of not doing that? The fear of, it's fear that's driving that. It's not love of doing it. And it's okay if I don't do it. It's not, and think about how much stress that is causing that individual for fear of not being able to do this or failing in that way. Yeah.
Once you're all in like that, it's you can't lose. But if you're in sport anyway, you will lose. Someone has to lose, you know.
Because you get to age 35, you'll retire and it'll be like, well, I've got 30 years left, like where I want to be active and working and contributing. And
exactly. And I think that's probably a reflection of our society, that, you know,
for sure,
we want someone to do one thing exceptionally well to the expense of everything else. You know, like we want our gladiators to be gladiators, not you know, businessmen. Whereas I think in the African philosophy, it was just a little bit different, you know.
Yeah, we're definitely generalists. We've evolved that way. And it's sometimes unhealthy when you specialize in one thing. And as what we're speaking to. So my question to you is, what would you be doing if you weren't doing what you were doing now?
Oh man, I actually wanted to join the army at one point, and I was quite keen on that. But I had a knee surgery, and I went through some of the testing, and I got this letter saying, you know, yeah, great, you should reapply in 5 years because we don't take anyone directly after knee surgery. You need to prove to us your knee's good. And I was like, at 20 years old, I was like, well, I'm not waiting 5 years. Forget it. So then my career turned towards health and healing. So that's maybe that's what I would be doing. I don't know, but I think I'd always be doing this. You know, my mum tells me when I was a kid, she would she'd play bridge, you know, and they have the ladies round for bridge, and I would go around and put my hands on their backs. And they'd be like, oh, you know, I like a little massage. I didn't know, I was like 7 years old, and I would start massaging their backs, and I'll go to the next one and next one. So I was doing this stuff even before I knew anything about it, you know?
Yeah. I read somewhere on your YouTube that you were always climbing, you were always active, you were always kind of playing as a kid.
Yeah.
What was growing up like for you?
You know, I'm not sure if everyone looks back at their childhood and thinks it's idyllic, but you know, mine was pretty special. I was in south of London, Guildford, Woking area, so quite an affluent area, and we have had and still have. My mother still lives in the same house. This ground floor flat on a Victorian sort of mansion that's converted into flats, but it comes with these huge grounds, and there's communal grounds. But when you got the ground floor, no one else uses the grounds because they're basically in your garden. So we have this, literally, it's half an acre of lawn out of the house, and then woods and woods and woods. So I was just off building camps, tree houses, and you know, I had these crazy zip lines. I look at them now and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so surprised we didn't die. It was everything that like a boy in the woods can want to do. That's kind of what I did. And so then I went to a private school, and it was a boarding school, and the boarding school would allow the older kids to lead an activity once a week. And so my activity when I was old enough, I called it adventure running. And essentially we would do parkour. Before I knew what parkour was, we were running through the woods, and sometimes there were outbuildings, or I remember there was a sewage treatment plant, and we would run across the sewage treatment plant, trying not to touch anything that smelled, obviously, but try and do it in a kind of a parkour way. And so I felt always I've been in this sort of movement, sort of body awareness type role. Even at 17, when I was allowed to take other kids with me, I was like, all right, everyone, we're running. And it reminds me, right now, I teach at the school, and I teach parkour. So I teach my son and my daughter and their friends. And it's not parkour really, because they're only 9 or 10 years old, but it's more natural movement, like MovNat, which I've done with Erwin LaCour. So I teach them MovNat and throw in bits of parkour into it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been on the podcast. We talked for an hour about spirituality.
Yeah, he's, you
I don't think we even mentioned movement. We literally just
you wind him up. I've interviewed him as well, and you set him off, and he just goes.
Yeah, you'll have to get him on your podcast then. So when's it? So you
got? I have.
Yeah, nice. So you got some interviews like
I've got a few lined up. That's for sure. Or already done. Sorry.
There's a teaser. Nice. What's the podcast called that you're launching?
Well, no surprise. It's called Lifestyle is Your Medicine.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Exactly. And
you can take any snippets out of this for the trailer if you like.
Oh, thank you very much. There's, and the premise that, if you don't mind me telling you the premise of the podcast,
absolutely not,
is if you've got lifestyle, and lifestyle medicine includes exercise, nutrition, sleep and recovery, avoiding toxin substances, and relationships. And if I take an expert in each one of those areas and interview them, then if a person listens to the podcast, they will get what they need in a more holistic way for lifestyle medicine. So, movement will be Erwin LaCour. Nutrition could be Dr. Terry Wahls, who recovered from or has reversed the symptoms of MS. Sleep. I've actually interviewed a guy for sleep who makes bespoke mattresses. Fascinating story on that, why he does that, and all the off-gassing from commercially made mattresses and so on. So anyway, just picking different experts in those different categories so that I can, have a really broad but focused approach to lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, and it's handpicked, isn't it, by you? And it's brilliant. Yeah, in connecting with these people even further and spreading their mission. It's like the more podcasts, the better. The more the better. The more options there are to delve in and resonate with people. Because I won't resonate with everyone, and you won't resonate with everyone. But the more people that are speaking to this in a holistic way, I don't see many arguments against the holistic way, unless it was, of course there are different areas you could speak to, but it's all encompassing. It's so vital to get to get culture looking at things in that way.
Yeah, totally. And people don't look at their lifestyle, and I don't want to be like the guy who points out the issue with someone gets a cancer and they're young, and that they just drink beer, eat fast food, and don't do any exercise. That I have this case, one of my friends, and I don't want to be the guy who says, well, maybe that cancer has something to do with your lifestyle, because that's not what's told to them. That's not the official narrative. It's just unlucky you. Don't worry, we'll put you on the chemo and take care of that. But it can be, and I'm not saying all cancers are caused by lifestyle, but we know that a lot of the intestinal cancers and a lot of the lung cancers and things are lifestyle. They're a consequence of lifestyle. Yeah.
Well, as I was alluding to at the start, it started somewhere, and it's more prevalent in some parts of the world and not others.
Exactly.
And when you look at communities and indigenous communities and certain cultures that are living in more of a natural way, and more in sync with their environment, more in harmony with the environment, and that's mental, physical, spiritual, isn't it? it's all the things. It's going out and gardening. It's having the connection to the food that you eat, with your feet on the ground, with being outdoors, and all these things that we can speak to in a natural way. And when certain parts of the world that, on average, this country, what is it, 10% of your day is spent outdoors on average for adults. And what's the quote about, I think it's prison inmates spend more time outdoors than
right. Because they get an hour or something. They get a full time outdoors. That's funny.
Kind of ushered out every day, and kids aren't. They're ushered in. It's interesting. I want to speak to two things about that, because I've worked on a lot of large scale charity physical events. I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but it's true. Like the dissonance and the lack of awareness and the education around it, put to events companies who are perhaps putting on these events, long distance walks, whatever it is, cycle rides, the charities that are essentially supporting and raising funds and also showcasing what we're doing for the people who have been diagnosed. The dissonance with the food, the lifestyle, the sleep, all of it, it's like it doesn't exist and it's not important. It's like when COVID came out, the amount of conversations that I had with people, I was like, well, have you changed anything in the last couple of years? Have you changed your diet or looked at it or altered things? Like, is there anything? And some people just, they don't know that that's the thing, that is the thing that is propping up their immune system or affects it in many ways. And it's kind of elementary, really, but it just is that dissonance between these things. It's just important to speak to, I feel. And there was what was the other thing? The other thing, the kind of light side of that, I did hear that Diabetes UK have just recently put together an event series called, I don't know what it's called, but it is about type 2 diabetes specifically, because we know that is a lifestyle disease. And it's about, they even included some breathwork teachers and yoga and stuff. And they were really trying to talk to the people who have been diagnosed about lifestyle, because that's just evidently about that. But it's interesting, that kind of space.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. You mentioned something earlier so my ex-wife Lucy, she has always wanted to buy a farm and live on a farm. So she bought one. She bought the land, just 5 acres, and then she built 2 houses on it. This is what she's been doing for the last couple of years. But previously, as an osteopath, she was a qigong practitioner, yoga practitioner, big meditator, very kind of taking time for herself, very sort of calm and wise. And yesterday I was talking to her about stuff, and she says, I haven't done anything for a year. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I haven't done any kind of practice for a year. I'm like, well, what are you doing? She's like, I get up in the morning, I got chickens, I got animals, I got plants, I got crises to fix. And she's just in there, connected to her land, 100%. And then she said, and when I read these posts from people who are talking about all this spiritual work they're doing, I'm like, how privileged are you? Just remember how privileged you are to have that time.
Yeah.
Also, maybe how disconnected are you? Because you're not on the land. You're not growing your own food, potentially. I don't know. But, she's there, and she's like, growing your own food is a full-time job. And that's what she's doing. And I thought it was so interesting. And then we came back full circle. And I said, well, actually, no, you're having that connection experience by being there on your land. You don't need the yoga.
Yeah. How privileged are you? Because that's not an option for so many. Land is such a hard thing to even acquire these days, let alone like you might 2-year waiting list for an allotment if you're lucky, but it's like, it's really challenging for people who want to live in that way. Well, those that are consciously wanting to, a lot of people wouldn't know it was good for them. But yeah, it's interesting. You can certainly look at it both ways. I've spoken on this podcast about it is such a privilege to be able to speak to the concepts, the kind of reflections on our world. When most people don't have most people in the world who are working manually, who are working just as a lifestyle, but it's working for a lifestyle kind of thing. They have to work. They don't have contemplation. They can't take 2 weeks off to and yes, it is a privilege, but that's where we're at as on the globe, that's where we're at. We're going to have to take this time to do that reflection. But if you are, and you're doing that work, you're doing that inner work, you're healing that trauma that has been passed down, the collective trauma, the wisdom, all of it. If you're speaking to that, I feel like, the best thing you can do for society is to self-realize, self-actualize. Of course, there's a balance, because then it perpetuates. But yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive.
About this, and you mentioned the blue zones earlier, and we're actually maybe 2 hours from a blue zone, from one of the official blue zones.
Wow.
And the people here in Nicaragua, I don't think they eat the same as they do in the Nicoya Peninsula. It's a little bit different, the general person. But when I talk to my Nicaraguan friends and they talk about their cousins in the countryside, the country cousins, they're like, oh yeah, they just sit around, do nothing, and just eat the food off the, that they grow. And like, they kind of look down on it a little bit because it's not advanced like in the town here. But I'm saying, whoa, no, that sounds amazing. Yeah, if you can just grow your own food, and you can eat your own food, and you can have a farm community that's, takes care of each other, that's the stuff of blue zones right there.
I know, I could count on, double figures. How many people would love to do that?
Yeah.
They would dream to be able to live in that way. And it's so interesting, because your perspective shapes your relationship with things, and depending on that, like there's two people with totally different circumstances, and they both think about the thing very differently, and one's stressed and one's not. It's so fascinating.
Goes through your lens. And here in Nicaragua, we're somewhere in between. It's like the town we're in is growing. There's people like me who've come here, and I'm aware that being here changes it, and that's kind of humbling when you think about it. But I'll drive out into town, and I'll pass a guy delivering raw milk with his oxen, his horse and cart, his 2 oxen, and his what do you call it, trailer, I guess, or his carriage.
Yeah.
And he's shouting, and he's delivering raw milk. And it's like, whoa, like I remember the milk floats. I was trying to explain to my kids about these electric milk floats, and how the milkman would come to the house, right, and put the milk outside the house in England. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but look at this guy. You're going to tell your grandkids or your kids about the guy with the oxen and the raw milk from the farm. He's not going to be around for much longer. So Nicaragua's in this interesting transition where you've got these old ways, and then you've got the new ways as well. But you don't have to go far into the countryside just to get right back to the old ways. It's still here.
Yeah. Well, electric milk floats, they were electric.
They were, weren't they? They made that humming noise. Off they go. Yeah, that's it. You remember?
I do remember. And I thought, wow, didn't know how safe it was. They only went like 10 miles per hour or something.
Yeah.
But they were so basic. It was like nothing.
Boxes, weren't they?
Yeah, nothing's really keeping it together. But yeah, I spent a good 6 months in Cambodia, living in rural Cambodia, just outside of Siem Reap, on volunteering as an English teacher on this. Wasn't a school really, it was a community center with a hut, and they had after school for these kids to teach them English. And there was lots of things that us being early 20s, quite naive, coming in with our righteous probably behavior, it was probably also judgmental about how they, not just how they lived, that we weren't like, but it was like how they should be educated, or how they and it wasn't authority driven. It wasn't like coming from that place. It was coming from love, but it also was coming from our lens of how to do things in the West, which they might not have even wanted or been ready for, or whatever it might have been. It's just interesting to check in with what you think is the way, because what we think is the way might be taking away things that are actually more wholesome and more like. I was reading something, it might have been Katie Bowman's book, about how lots of people in the West and the movement culture like look to manual labor as like, a really lots of jobs, really functional. You're developing strength, flexibility, and mobility, and all of it. and earning money at the same time. It's like, wow, what a privilege to be able to do that. It shifted so much in me. It was like, because we have this vision of like a perspective on manual labor as being like further down the ladder. And it's like, well, why? You're getting your needs met as a human. And, it's just, it's interesting when you shift that.
Isn't it? That whole, there's that apocryphal story about like the rich American, well, I call him American, but the rich Westerner comes to the little beach in some island somewhere in the Caribbean, and he says to this guy, he's a fisherman, he's like, if you take a loan, you could buy, you heard this one, you could get 2 fishing boats. And for your listeners who haven't, maybe some of you heard this, and then you get 2 fishing boats, you can have a bigger catch, and with that you can reinvest the money, and then you can get a whole fleet, and then you can move your head office to New York, and then in 50, 60 years time, you can retire and live on the beach. And the fisherman says, well, but I already do. I live on the beach,
Yeah, it's incredible.
Isn't it?
Yeah, Alex Manzi told that story, and I made him tell it again because it's so good on a live that we did. But it was one of the first podcasts. Right. It was the fisherman. He's like, well, why would I do that? Well, why would I want to do that? Oh, so you can do this, so you can do this. Why would I want to do that? Because you can then retire at 50 and do what you're doing now.
Doesn't make any sense. And so the people, but that's one of the things, is like the people here in Nicaragua, I actually, I don't know this because I haven't asked them specifically, but when the Westerners come down here, or the North Americans, I should say, we're like, oh, look at the sunset. Isn't that amazing? Look at the way we get to live. Isn't that amazing? And I wonder whether the locals here think the same thing. Like, like you get the fish is the last one to see the water. They're living in paradise. I don't see the discontent. I don't see them trying to live any differently, but I haven't specifically asked the question, but I hope they do. I hope they're like, yeah, if all these rich people from North America are moving down here and we already live here, we must be doing something right. The luck of the luck of the draw, I guess.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is interesting. I often think about the Lake District and certain mountainous places in England where loads of people travel to go there, spend their months of savings to go on retreat in a place where lots of people live. And the locals that live there, they never go up the hills. They've never been to the top of Scarfell if they've been living there and born there, and it just doesn't appeal to them. It's very interesting.
It is interesting. I moved to Canada, so I was there 15 years, and we were by some world-class skiing. We became fair weather skiers. We wouldn't go skiing unless the conditions were nice. I do remember some friends coming out from England, and they booked their ski holiday. So it was a big chunk of change to come out to Canada and all that kind of stuff. And it was terrible weather. Like, it was minus in centigrade. It was minus 20. It's not skiing weather. And they were ringing me up saying, "You're going to come skiing?" I'm like, "No, it's minus 20. I don't go out when it's like minus 20. And they were like, "Well, we are." Anyway, I caught up with them a couple of days in the holiday, and they were having a fantastic time. And I was thinking, you know what? Why aren't I skiing with them? And I spent the rest of the week skiing with them because I wanted to, experience it with them. But at the same time, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And it took that little shift in my mindset of being sort of accustomed to having skiing on tap whenever I want it, when it's good weather, to actually go when it's bad weather. And I think that's probably what happens to those people in the Lake District and stuff. They just don't see it until someone shows it to them,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's often the case for sure.
Yeah.
And also we have this perspective or mindset of home being work and away being holiday and fun.
Yeah.
And that relates to our immediate environment, where we don't really explore the immediate environment around us. It took me really to go traveling for 2 years to come back home and being like, oh, there's a shift there. I understand that there's so much available locally to then go into that and look for that. Just like you would if you were, if you went away on holiday and picked a spot, you'd actively, like, consciously be like, right, I'm here, let's seize the time, go out, do this, see this, explore. And we can do that where we live. There's different paths on the way to work. Like, there's so much that we don't see, which is in and around us. We get that kind of tunnel vision
you get tunnel vision. You're right.
And a misunderstanding of like where we associate fun to be and pleasure, and then where we don't.
Yeah,
man. So I'd love to talk to you about a few more things. The David Goggins. Was that recently when you did the 4 hours and 48?
Oh yeah, I've done that twice now.
Okay, how was that? And also I know you've been passionate and about and wearing Vivos for a long time now.
I was wearing Vivos 10 years ago before Vivos were a thing. But then I couldn't get them, I think, in Canada. I can't remember where I got them. I think I got them in England. And then I shifted to a company called Lems, which is basically the same concept. And then I'm back with the Vivos now. But let's go for the barefoot thing. So I've always been interested in barefoots.
What got you interested in that, first of all?
I think it was Owen LaCour, maybe. Just working out barefoot, in the gym, you've got to have a toes closed shoe and all that kind of stuff. And then I did a retreat with Erwan in Mexico, and it was very, you know him obviously. So for your listeners, this guy he's a French guy, but he lives in America, and he's quite blunt in the way he communicates. So his retreat was this: it was like, meet at 8:30 on the beach in Yalapa in Mexico, and it was like, okay, cool. Thinking maybe I'll get some recommendations for hotels and all that kind of stuff. It's nothing, just one email, one line. And so, me and a bunch of other guys were standing on the beach at 8:30. Then he walks up, he's like, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we begin. And that was it. I was like, whoa, what an awesome way to run a retreat. Anyway, so we got into the barefoot thing through natural movement, or MovNat. But I can't remember. The timeline doesn't add up because I didn't. Anyway, I think I was into it for whatever reason. I can't remember, but I know he cemented my thoughts on it. Mm-hmm. And then I have a running injury, or had a running injury. I'm still battling with it on and off, but it comes. It's like natural. It's a lateral pain on my knee, but only at high mileage. And running barefoot put another 5K on to that without actually changing anything. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Running barefoot in Vivos. But it would still come. And I was talking to this one ultra distance runner whose story is classic. He's had a bunion, he couldn't run, and he's got his toe straightened up with a little correct toe. It's a company called Correct Toes in the US. And he could run maybe 10K, and now he's running ultra marathons. It's like a classic story. So I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, man, you got to go thinner. Vivos are too thick. I'm like, well, 4 millimeters is pretty thin. I don't think there's anything thinner out there. And he's like, yeah, you got to go sandal. So I went to the Zero sandals. And the first time I put them on, I made them myself. So you get the kit, and then you put the hole where your toe is, and you kind of glue them all up. And I put these things on. I'm like, man, these are going to rip my feet to pieces. Half marathon off the bat, like no problems. And I was like, whoa, okay, I've found it. And so then I went full marathon in them, and my knee pain came back. So it was so somewhere in between, I think, is a sweet spot with the barefoot. And then so rewind. Running on the roads here, they have these jagged rocks that come up out of the road. So you're on a dirt road, but where the cars go over, they compact the dirt, and the sandals, and even to some extent the Vivos, will bruise my feet if I'm not 100% like concentrating the whole time, which is quite tiring. So recently I actually bought a pair of running shoes, like proper running shoes, but they're called Ultra. So they have this wide toe box, straight edge down one side, and they're zero drop, but they just have a little bit more cushioning. And I can actually run here on the dirt roads with the Ultras, and I run on the paved roads with the Vivos or the sandals.
Mm-hmm. So how did your technique shift in just transitioning straight to sandals, and you were able to run a lot longer? Did you notice your technique changing, or was that yeah,
hugely? So it's the classic. If a person was to run, let's say you're running on a soft trail or a beach or something like that. Imagine you're running on that, and then there's some gravel coming up. You're not going to run the same way you run on gravel as the same way you run on the beach. So you would change, and you'd be like, oh, and you'd be a lot quicker with a high cadence with your feet. You perhaps wouldn't land on your heel and so on. And the body will just do that. Like anyone running beach to gravel to beach will change the way they run when they run over the gravel. It's just the natural. And the same thing happens with the barefoots. That when you go from a cushioned shoe to running barefoot, your gait will naturally change. There might be some things you may want to consider about your upright posture. I know you know Tony Riddle, so the barefoot way of running, there is a little bit of coaching that can help, but the body remembers how to do it if you just give it the right opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I think when you're traversing different terrain, like you will be over such a long distance, you're not just on a track. Because I think when it comes to tracking transition, there obviously needs to be some understanding of your posture and shifting that. But yeah, what you just said is so true, because you will be going from different terrain. You'll be stiffer, you'll be more relaxed, and that
Mm-hmm.
shift will come from noticing the ground and the movement brain. It's
Yeah.
it's in there. Yeah, amazing, man. Yeah, any opportunity, I'm like, let's speak to the Vivos and
Barefoot.
let's speak
Yeah, no,
to
I love
being Barefoot.
I love them, and I actually put. So I was in the gym the other day, and I go barefoot to the gym because our gym is a very relaxed place, and I've started training with this guy, and he's like, well, we're doing kettlebell stuff. You kind of put them down. He's like, maybe you should get some shoes. I was
Mm.
like, I don't know, man. I don't really want any shoes. And then he convinced me to put some shoes on, and I got knee pain. Like, oh, sorry, this was I went to a store and I bought some. Out here, you get these secondhand. You can't buy new shoes. You can, but you have to go 3 hours to do that. So you go to the little store, and these charities out of the US send down like bags of shoes, and you rummage through them and you find a pair that match. So I got a pair of like a Nike Air Max or something, put them on. I went to the gym, and man, my knees hurt so much. It was weird. I had to take them off. So they were messing with everything.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
about 2018 where I bought these New Balance, but they were minimal. They were minimalist. I think they
Right.
called them minimal or something. And I worked on an event with them, which I'm going to be walking like 20 miles or something over the weekend. And I was in agony. I was in agony. But then after that, I was fine. I was in. I went through a bit of a transition, and then had to kind of reduce the amount of time I spent in them. But yeah, since then I've never
I see.
even.
So you were transitioning into them. So this is me transitioning back from
I
barefoot.
know, very interesting.
But I thought about it, and I thought I should be robust enough to be able to wear this shoe. What if I got to put on Wellington boots for the day? I don't want a knee pain, and I feel kind of like my body's lacking. There's something quite lacking that it couldn't accommodate that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But at the same time, I was doing like a specific lunges and walking and heavy carries and so on. So I was pushing the body in a way, perhaps that stressed the knees. But I feel like robustness, so when the core kind of philosophy is like, we should have this movement repertoire that can accommodate a different change in footwear or different clothes or different environments. So anyway, that was a self-reflection point for me to work out what's weak, what needs to be more robust.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, brilliant. Great chatting to you, and yeah, hopefully we'll get one in person at some point. And
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to touch upon? Anything you've got coming up, or you want to just speak to?
Not really. I mean, I think we've covered almost everything here. We could dive into the spirituality stuff. I think we'll do that another time. But just excited to get my podcast out as well. Your lifestyle is your medicine. So
That's
if anyone
cool,
wants to check that out, please do.
Yeah, happy to promote as well. Just tag us on Instagram, or I'll put the link in whenever it is out on this podcast. Cool, awesome, mate. Thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate you coming on. It's great to connect. And very, very easy when you have a lot in similar perspective, and knew that would be the case.
I'm glad we finally connected. Thank you.
Yes, man. Okay, awesome. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. And if you wanted to send this to someone that it helps grow the podcast. That will be very beneficial. I'd love to know your thoughts on some of the things we discussed today. Hit us up in the comments. Communicate with us in the comments. You can do that. I will, make sure I get an answer from Ed if you wanted to ask a question directly. So communicate in the comments. Hit that like, the bell, and subscribe. Would appreciate that so much. Enjoy your day, whatever you're up to. Make it strong. Thank you.